everyone, welcome back to Audit Talk, your go-to podcast for all things auditing, finance, and corporate governance. I'm Farzana, and with me is my co-host Anis, and today we are talking about something important in auditing, which is audit expectation gap or AEG. Over the years, we have seen many corporate scandals locally and globally. These issues have seriously affected how people trust financial reporting and, most importantly, how people view the auditors. Every time a company collapses or fraud is exposed, society immediately turns to the auditor and asks, why didn't you see this? Because of that, auditors today face increasing criticism and even lawsuits. Public assume auditors should provide total protection, find every fraud, and prevent company from failing. But these expectations are actually far beyond from what auditors are responsible to do under the audit standards.
Yeah, right. We also saw this during the 1MDB scandal in Malaysia, when billions went missing, fake documents, weird transaction. The whole world was talking about it, and everyone kept on asking the same question: where were the auditors? People expected auditors to be like FBI to detect every fraud, every hidden transaction. But here's the interesting part: were the auditors actually responsible to detect all of that, or it's just something that we call audit expectation gap?
Exactly. And today we are going to dive into what the audit expectation gap is.
So let me start with the big question. What do people think auditors do versus what actually auditors do?
Love that. That's exactly where the expectation gap starts. So AEG refers to the gap between what the people think auditors should do and what auditors are responsible to do under the audit standards.
So it's basically a mismatch of expectation.
Yes, indeed. So there's a quick overview of audit expectation gap.
All right, now let us hear from someone inside the auditing world who works in one of the big four firms, plus a former Deloitte and now a lecturer at UITM Selangor.
Let's invite our special guest from KPMG to talk about today's topic. Good morning, Ms. Adin. We are really happy to have you with us today to share your knowledge with us. Thank you for joining. Before we start, can you share us a little bit about yourself?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. My name is Adin Farsha and I'm currently working as an internal auditor at KPMG.
Can you tell us a little bit about your job and the issue that you always face when you work as internal auditor?
My job is all about reviewing internal control, managing risk, and making sure organization runs smoothly and follow good governance. One issue that I often see is the audit expectation gap, and that's what we'll be talking about today.
Absolutely true, Miss Adlin. Now let us start with the basic. From your experience, what are the types of audit expectation gap?
Sure, there are actually two main types. The first type is the reasonableness gap. This happens when the people expect us as an auditor, whether internal or external, to do things that are realistic. Some stakeholders think we should detect fraud, catch or mistake, or even predict when a company is going to collapse. But actually, audit are based on reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. We evaluate processes and risks, but we can't guarantee perfection. So the second type is the performance gap. This is when the people feel the audit wasn't done well enough or didn't meet their expectation. It actually includes two parts, which is first, deviation standard, where the people expect us to do more than what the standard required. And for the second type is the deviation performance, where the people believe auditor didn't perform their work thoroughly. With the two gap together, this explains why the misunderstanding between auditor and stakeholder keep happening.
That's a solid explanation. Now, can you tell us what kind of impact does this expectation gap create?
Firstly, I think it reduces trust in the audit function. If something goes wrong in a company, people tend to blame the auditors, even if the issue was way beyond what an audit is meant to be detected. Secondly, I think it creates pressure and miscommunication in organization. Sometimes the management expect internal auditor to act like investigator, fraud hunter, or even risk predator, which isn't our actual role. And the third one, the expectation gap that can weaken the credibility of governance. If people don't trust internal audit, they start adopting the entire internal control and risk management system. I think that's all from me today. I thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed my sharing perspective as an internal auditor at KPMG.
Thank you, Ms. Adlin, for joining us. That was incredibly insightful.
And now we'll be bringing in our next guest who will share another point of view on the audit expectation gap. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. So, before the break, we had Miss Adlin sharing the early parts of our discussion on audit expectation gap.
Yeah, and now we are thrilled to continue with our second guest, Dr. D. Dr. D, before we jump in, could you tell our listener a bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Dr. D, a former Deloitte auditor, and now I'm a lecturer at UiTM Selangor. I have worked on both financial and performance audit, and I'm really excited to share some insight on why this audit expectation gap exists and how we can address it.
Thanks, Dr. D. Let's get into it. When people talk about audit expectation gap, what are the main reasons it even exists?
Well, there are several causes. First, many people simply don't fully understand what audit involves. Non-auditors often assume that auditors are responsible for detecting every single error or fraud, but actually, audits are designed to provide reasonable assurance, not a 100% guarantee. Think of it like a smoke detector in a building. It alerts you to danger, but doesn't even prevent every possible fire.
Ah, that's a helpful analogy. So it's really the difference between the expectation and reality?
Yeah, exactly. And this misunderstanding has led to the second cause, which is the misinterpretation of auditor responsibilities. People often assume that auditors are supposed to find all fraud, but actually, in reality, auditors focus on areas with higher risk or suspicious indicators. For example, if a company's financial statement appear consistent, auditor will prioritize the higher risk account rather than checking every minor transaction.
I see. So it's not that auditors aren't thorough, it's that their role has clear limit defined by the standards.
Yes, and the third reason combined between public trust and knowledge gap. Some people doubt auditor independence, especially when certain findings can't be disclosed due to confidentiality or security. At the same time, the public often doesn't fully understand auditing standards or processes. When knowledge and trust don't align, expectation can become unrealistic, and that widens the gap.
Okay, thanks, Dr. D. That's really helped break it down. Now, moving on, what can we done to reduce this expectation gap?
There are a few ways. First, public education and awareness. People need to fully understand what audit actually involves, what auditors are responsible for, and what they are not. Seminars, workshops, and even simple campaigns can help. For example, showing real audit example of what gets checked versus what doesn't can be very enlightening.
That makes sense. What about the auditors themselves?
That is the second approach, which is continuous auditor training. Keeping auditor skills sharp, improve audit quality, and build public confidence. The more competent auditors are, the more the public trusts the process.
And the audio reports, they play a role too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Clear communication and transparency in audit report is critical. Audit reports should clearly explain scope, purpose, limitation, and responsibilities. Additionally, auditors can enhance public trust by demonstrating independence through transparent reporting or public summaries. When people understand both the process and the boundaries, their expectations become much more realistic.
I see. That was an excellent discussion, very clear and practical. Thank you, Dr. D, for joining us and for taking the time to explain the causes of audit expectation gap and ways to reduce it.
You are most welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this discussion. It's been a pleasure sharing insight with your listeners. Bye.
Yeah, listener now have a much better understanding of why the audit expectation gap exists and how it can be addressed. Now, let us move to our final section. So, after everything we have been discussed today, it's clear that the audit expectation gap is still a real challenge in the profession. And the public often expect auditors to detect every fault, guarantee accuracy, and to protect the company from failure. But that's not what an audit is designed to do. At the same time, auditors still have to perform their duties properly and follow the standards.
Exactly. And from our guest explanation, we can see that the gap happened because of unrealistic expectations, misunderstandings, and sometimes weaknesses in audit performance. So, reducing this gap is important to protect the credibility and trust in auditing profession.
To add on to what Dr. D mentioned earlier, we have two additional recommendations that also can help to reduce the expectation gap. The first one is enhancing the audit report transparency. When audit reports clearly explain what auditors can and cannot do, users will have a more realistic understanding of the audit's purpose and limitations.
And second, strengthening regulatory oversight. When regulators tightening monitoring of audit quality, it helps ensure consistent performance among auditors, which can reduce the performance gaps.
So, overall, reducing the expectation gap requires effort from everyone, from the auditors, from regulators, and the public. Only then the audits can remain reliable, trusted, and relevant.
So I think that's all from today's episode. Hope to see you guys on next episode. Bye.
Bye!